Welcome to episode 19 of the PregActive podcast. This is a special podcast as we go through the first 12 months of having a newborn. I talk through my experience and I also delve deep with one of my good friends and PregActive mamas, Sophie, all about her journey along that 12 months. It's in a timing that we recorded this a long time ago, and now as our babies, our firstborns, become almost 2, I feel like this is a really good time to release this episode. 2-part series, so stay tuned and listen. Here is part 1. Hi, I'm Karen, the founder of PregActive, and through this PregActive podcast, I'm going to help you to feel empowered, informed, and confident through your pregnancy and postpartum journey as we talk all things health, mind, and fitness. I am so excited for this special edition podcast because it is all about celebration of mamas around the world, but particularly of us. So me and my dearest friend Sophie, we were so blessed to go through our pregnancy together, and we had our babies 1 week apart. So she had a baby girl 1 week earlier than I had my baby boy Max. And I thought, in celebration of Max just turning 1, me being a mum for 12 months now, I thought, who better to have on the podcast than Sophie? So welcome, Sophie.
Thanks, beautiful. Nice to speak to you. Thanks for having me.
This is good. This is good. So we're going to go through, I guess, our journey and, I guess really talk about the ups and the downs because motherhood really is that. It's a roller coaster, and it doesn't matter who you are. You have your ups and you have your downs, and it's just going to be a really nice reflection. And you know what? Hey, we'll sit together in 50 years' time with a glass of wine and listen to this podcast and go, oh, look at us, so young and naive, probably.
Definitely.
And the thing is, you don't know what you don't know. And I think that's what's cool about this whole journey is that we've only, we think we're on top of it now, but we're so not. There's so much to come.
Yeah, I always feel like I know everything because I've had a baby, like about having a baby because I've had a baby. But then you're every day constantly reminded, like, oh no, I've just learned something new. I'm so early in this journey.
I know.
And, like you said, there's so many ups and downs on the daily.
Yes. And the other thing is, this was our first, both of us.
Yeah.
And so, we'll come back in years to come after having, more and go, oh, wow, look at us.
How ignorant we were. Yeah, totally.
So I wanted to start with, I guess, finding out each other was pregnant, because that was such a cool moment. So I remember being in the car and driving, and I called you because I hadn't spoken to you for a little while, and I thought, I really want to speak to Sophie. And do you remember that moment where it was sort of like chat, pause?
I think I said to you, I've got something to tell you. And I remember thinking, oh, that was a strange response, because you said something like, oh, do you? And I was like, yeah. And I think maybe you said, are you pregnant? Straight away, maybe? Was that right? No.
I can't really remember, but I remember we squealed.
Yeah, that's how I remember it. And I was like, yes, I am. And you were like, so am I.
How many weeks are you? Yeah. And we were so close. I think our due dates at that point, because my due date ended up changing, we were only days apart. And that was just so exciting. And I remember going to PregActive classes, which I was, surrounded by beautiful mamas and mamas to be. And when I told them that story, they went, oh, your life is complete. You're going through a pregnancy with a friend. Like, how cool is that? I'm like, oh,
so cool.
Yeah.
And I think your due date must have been just before mine, because the whole time we expected you to have Max first. And then sort of out of the blue, honey came a little bit earlier, a week beforehand.
And that's
She
the
was 2 weeks
thing.
early.
Oh, okay. And knowing so many pregnant women who were due around the same time for me, and then when we actually found out that you guys had had honey, that was my reality. That was
Mm.
me going, "I'm next."
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Was that strange when we sent a photo of us with our baby
It
to you
was
guys?
it was so I think I actually got nervous for the first time.
Yeah, right.
Because previous to then, so the pregnancy, we got to share in the pregnancy and, little exciting things and so on. But
Mm,
in that lead up, particularly third trimester,
mm,
I remember being really grounded and really strong and really feeling like I've got this.
mm.
But then at the same time going, oh my goodness, do I?
Yeah,
And, I've obviously helped a lot of women beforehand, but it's not going through it myself. I was like, goodness, I hope that I can do this.
yeah.
And then hearing about your birth, and I didn't know anything about it, to be honest. Like, I just knew you'd had your
Yeah.
baby. And I was like, oh goodness, I don't know if I want to know. Like, do I
Mm,
want to? Do I
mm,
want to know?
mm,
Is it a good story? Is it like going to scare me? Am I going to be inspired? Like, what's going to happen?
mm. You
And
probably don't wanna know other people's stories at that point, do you? Because you just need to stay focused, you need to keep it together, stay in your zone, and you can be very easily put off by a negative story or, not that mine was negative, but yeah, I don't think you wanna know other people's so close to that point when you're about to experience it for yourself for the first time.
so emotional too. You cry at anything.
Mm,
Like something wasn't warmed up hot enough or
yeah.
something, you'd cry. Like.
Oh gosh, I'll note that for next pregnancy, Kez.
Yeah. It's just an example.
Yeah,
But yeah, and I remember we didn't actually speak. I don't think we actually
in
spoke. I
between.
can't remember. Yeah, but I remember you sending me a text, and it stayed with me because you wrote in that text something beautiful about how amazing, it is to have a baby and so on. And you wrote to me, you said, Kez, you are totally going to own your birthing experience.
Mm,
And your voice, actually your voice, replayed that in my head so many times that week because it was an exact week between our
mm,
births.
mm. Aw,
And that resonated with me so much because I thought, well, look, I don't really know what Sophie's story is, but whatever her birth was, for her to be able to say that to me
mm,
is just so powerful from someone who's just gone through it.
mm.
And it got me excited.
Yeah, yeah,
Like it flipped the nerves and it changed the unknown to be something more like there's a bit of known, there's a bit of, you've done it and now you're saying that. So, yeah,
mm,
whatever the outcome. And I think that's so important. It
yeah,
doesn't matter what delivery mode you have. If you feel like you've owned it, like if you're feeling good about your birth, that's what matters, not.
absolutely. Someone said to me recently, it's not the story of your birth that matters, but how you felt about that experience. So it
Mm,
doesn't matter if you had a
that.
C-section, it doesn't matter if it was
Mm,
emergency, it doesn't matter if you ended up having to have intervention and you didn't want it, or, if it didn't
mm,
go the way that you expected it to, and your story wasn't how you had hoped. It's more about the way you embraced it, the way you surrendered to it, and the way you felt about the experience. So I was really lucky and I did have a really positive birthing experience, and it was, the best day of my life. I love it when I look back, and I know you
mm,
had a beautiful experience as well. But at that time, it was just, I just wanted to like scream it from the rooftops. And I knew that you were, so close behind me. I didn't want to say anything that was going to influence you in any other way apart from just letting you know that you are going to totally own it. Like,
mm,
yeah, you'll be fine. You'll be amazing at it. And like, go for it, girl.
yes, and I did.
And you certainly did. Well, you have no
I
choice
did.
either, do you?
No, it's like, okay, well, I literally was next,
Mm,
and so, yeah, going through that was really cool. And I did. And, you know, I don't know how you felt about when you first realized that honey was now in the world. Like Max had this little cry, like, you know, I was on all fours and I the push push push, like the,
Mm,
you know, doing everything, and then all of a sudden I hear this cry and I was just so happy in that moment.
mm,
I don't know what hormones I was on or what happened in my body, but
mm,
everything was just like flooding with love and feeling
mm,
amazing at that moment. You know,
oxytocin,
naked.
that's what you're on?
Love it. And just everything was just so good.
Mm,
And, you know, I think that is an amazing thing. Obviously, that doesn't happen for everybody, and I'm not putting that expectation out there for every mother to feel that, but I'm
mm,
just sharing my own experience.
yeah.
And I didn't expect that. And, you know, I had my birth photographer there. I was cracking jokes. I was, you know, doing all different things. I don't know what I was on, but she's like, "You are in such good mood."
Yeah, yeah, the
Like, yeah,
ultimate
I am.
high, the ultimate high, so
The
much,
ultimate.
yeah,
Yeah,
oxytocin and adrenaline from going through that with your physical body as well. But it's an
everything.
interesting point you make about, you know, sharing a positive story and sort of and giving other people certain expectations, because I remember I had this expectation. I suppose it's a little bit like, you know, sort of visualizing or remembering a movie scene, or, you know, things that people have told you about how you instantly fall in love with your baby as soon as it's born. And I didn't have that feeling. Like,
Mhm.
yes, I had so much oxytocin, you know, running through my body and so much blood running through my veins, and I felt on a complete high. And but the feeling for me was more like the achievement for myself. And
Yes.
I was relieved that my baby was out and she was healthy and she was there and I was still alive. Like, I'd got through it. And, you know, my partner was there, my mum was there, and was almost just more like, you know, this amazing feeling of achievement for myself. And it took me, you know, sort of quite some time to really fall in love with my baby. And so I felt a little bit weird about it at the time, because I was like, I don't feel that like what everyone says they felt. But now in hindsight, I get that everyone's experience is different.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, it's definitely good to point out that, yeah, it's best not to have expectations
Do you know,
because you can
it's
only be
funny
let
you say.
down.
Oh, and that's the motto I actually go by now with everything in any way, because anytime you have expectation, there is that room for disappointment.
Mm, yeah.
It doesn't matter if it's, you know, like we saw a comedian and we thought, oh, he's the best. This is so funny. We were laughing our heads off.
Mm.
And then so we went searching for other, you know, shows by him, and
They weren't
it
as
wasn't as
good.
funny.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it just goes to show it's anything. You have this expectation and there's that room for disappointment.
Mm,
And I think that that's one thing I really took on board from talking to so many pregnant women and new mothers
mm,
was all of my expectations were low in the good ways. Like,
mm,
that makes sense. So all of the things I was expecting bad things. For example, one thing that actually shocked me was that how much I still loved my tummy after giving birth to Max. And because so many people had said to me, oh, I hated my body. I
mm,
hated everything about, you know, I looked down and it was like this empty, wobbly, like, you know, squishy tummy. And you know, my baby wasn't in there anymore.
mm.
And I remember thinking, oh, that's going to be a horrible feeling. And I, days after giving birth, I looked down, I'm like, oh, look at my little belly. It's like a little mini pregnant belly.
Yeah. I suppose that's a result of the industry that you work in and who you are and what you do. You know, you spend time with women who are trying to, you know, recover from their childbirth and rebuild their bodies again. And I mean, we all know that in this day and age, there's so much comparison and so much pressure to look a certain way. And so I suppose that you're conditioned to, helping people feel and look better, and are surrounded by a lot of people who don't like the way that they look or don't feel their
Mm.
best. So
Yeah.
that's probably pretty normal. But yeah, like you said, I suppose it's sort of a blessing for you.
Yeah.
You're expecting to, not be
Feel
feeling
gross.
confident and
Yeah.
yeah, be feeling gross after, but you didn't.
Didn't. And that's the other thing. I don't know, for you, those first few weeks now, looking back,
Mm,
is very different. But those first few weeks, again, so many people say, oh, it's horrible. It's like you're setting an alarm clock every 4 hours, but you're not setting an alarm clock. You've just got a
mm,
baby screaming at you.
mm,
And those sort of sleep deprived nights and days, and a lot of people don't enjoy that time.
mm. Yeah,
How
it's
did you
hard.
go in that time, those
I
first few
wouldn't
weeks?
say that I didn't enjoy it, but I found it extremely challenging. I think I underestimated or was just naive. I mean, let's be honest, like no one really knows what they're in for. Doesn't matter who
Mm,
tells you, doesn't matter how much you know, it's still not going to be the same experience that you have. But I suppose I was a little bit naive. I've spent a lot of time around children. I come from a big family. I've got lots of nieces and nephews. I did lots of babysitting as a teenager, and I've been around a lot of babies. Um, I am one of 6 kids. My mum's extremely maternal, so I just sort of felt like I was going to be quite capable, and I just didn't realize how challenging it was, um, and how much the sleep deprivation was going to affect my emotions. I
mm,
also ended up with tonsillitis, like on about day
that's
5 or
right.
6, which was horrible, and threw a total spanner in the works because I felt terrible for a good week. Um, so yeah, I found it really difficult. Yeah, I wouldn't say that I didn't enjoy it because I was every minute of every day falling more and more in love with my baby and bonding with her and loving that part, and also just appreciating the ride of the hormones as well, because I had some real ups, some real like amazing, beautiful, wonderful, um, once in a lifetime moments. But then I had some days where I just really wanted to cry and I had no idea why. I was just so sad.
So
I felt like
normal.
I wanted to, run away from it. It was, really
Yeah.
difficult. I felt, and I suffer a little bit from anxiety, so a lot of triggers were kind of coming up for me at that time. I think mostly, again, in hindsight, basking in the glory of hindsight is wonderful. But I think the sleep deprivation really is what I found the most challenging. It triggered a lot of anxieties for me and made that time quite difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a powerful thing. I feel like hormones and
Mm,
sleep are powerful,
mm,
and, you mix them all up and it can become quite complex.
hot
That's for
mess.
sure. Yeah. One thing I loved about the first few weeks was the fact that I just switched off to everything else.
Isn't that
Like
amazing?
my life's so busy,
Mm,
and obviously running a business and everything that I do, I was going pretty strong right up until like 4 days before I gave birth,
mm,
and then to give myself that permission and just be like, this is your time just to be with this baby. My husband was amazing, cooking, everything was getting cleaned, I didn't have to do any of that
mm,
stuff. And so to be just the feeding machine
mm,
and to be, the cuddle machine, and that was okay with me.
mm,
I was thinking about it today, actually, back when I was traveling in South America. I climbed Machu Picchu and I actually got really sick.
Mhm.
And when I came back, they're like, "Oh, you should go to the doctor." Anyway, went to the doctor and he's like, "Oh, we need to, get you on whatever it was, antibiotics or something, and we have to get you into the hospital." So I had to stay in the hospital.
Mm.
And I'd been traveling for about 7 months around the world at this stage. And I was actually exhausted. I didn't realize, but I was like on the go, lots of different things. And I was volunteering in Peru at the stage. And I just got so exhausted that to go to the hospital and be there and not do anything was amazing.
It was
It
like your
was like,
holiday within your holiday.
right. And the fact it's like a meditation, right? Meditation, you focus on one thing.
Mhm.
So when your life's like hectic and busy and you're trying to multitask and do lots of things, when it all comes down to being in one spot and having nothing to do or having one thing to do, it is this sort of, you can choose to be bored with it or you can choose to be frustrated with it. But for me, I was just like, oh, this is good.
Mm.
And obviously, teary moments here and there with, coming back to those early weeks postpartum,
Mhm.
like ups and downs and those sort of things. But really, when I look back, I treasure those first couple of weeks because they're never going to happen again.
Mm.
If we have another baby, it's you got a toddler
Yeah.
or
Yeah, it's
you've
different.
got all these other things that are going on,
Mhm.
and obviously hopefully you have more help. But those first few weeks looking back, I think definitely the tonsillitis for you was a really hard part of that journey. I remember talking to you and you're like, I was at the doctor and he was like, I was crying and he's like, what day are you
Yeah.
postpartum? And you're like, 5.
Yes.
And he's like, okay, well, this explains a lot.
Yeah. That's
It's like,
exactly
it's
how it
normal.
happened too. I think it was a public holiday or for some
Mhm.
reason I couldn't go to the doctor. It was actually, yeah, again, another little blessing because we had that sort of, yeah, I don't know what service where the doctor comes to you on a public holiday when doctors' clinics are closed. And he literally came in. I was sitting in there breastfeeding Honey in the bedroom, and he literally just walked into the bedroom, and I burst into tears. And he was this really lovely man, and he was very soft and gentle. And yeah, he said exactly that. What day are you? And I was like 5, sobbing to him, and he was like, "That's okay. Everything that you're experiencing and feeling is all very normal, and your emotions are normal. It's okay." And I was like, "Oh, thank you for, being so nurturing and caring and understanding. I don't know what's going on."
So nice to be reassured in those times.
Yeah, it's really
That's for
important.
sure,
It's really
especially from
important.
an expert. Oh,
Mm,
so good.
mm,
But you know what? I say those first few weeks were amazing for me, and I liked being in that bubble
mm,
because it was an escape from the outside world.
mm,
But it wasn't always like that. Like I feel like people often look at my journey and think, "Oh, wow,
mm.
how wonderful."
Yeah, yeah,
Well, you weren't here at this time and this moment because
yeah. And the hard
it was
moments you don't share with people as
oh,
much, do you? It's not the it's not
well,
the it's not the posts that you put on Instagram.
well, I do share them, but not in a public space
Mm,
often, and particularly not when you're going through it. I
mm,
think that's, as much as everybody cares, if I was to put something out like, oh, I'm having a horrible day, you get, all the text messages, all the, direct messages coming back going, oh, you're okay, la la. And I don't think that's what you need, to be fair. Like sometimes you just need one good conversation with someone else to be like, okay, this is what's happening in my head and this is, the outcome, and you feel a bit refreshed
most definitely.
afterwards.
For
Yeah.
me, it's someone close to me that I love. That's all I need, to
Yeah,
reassure me.
definitely. For sure, exactly.
Mm,
And that's what I found. I probably struggled. There was a few points that I struggled with.
mhm,
And one point definitely was that 3 to 4 months postpartum.
Yeah, okay, and why
I,
is that?
I really remember it being a hard part. I mean, we'd been now in isolation
Mm,
because of COVID for about 5 to 6 weeks at this stage,
mhm,
and that was starting to get a bit testing itself.
mm.
But the hair loss
Oh, really? See, I didn't experience that at all.
really, well, I sure did,
Really?
and
I
it
didn't know
was
that.
clumps and clumps and clumps of hair just coming out of my head everywhere. Like, I actually had to have my hair tied up when I slept because I was getting up in the middle of the night for Max. Because if I had my hair down, then I'd wake up the next day and there was just hair all on the ground everywhere.
Wow,
It
God.
was so bad, Sophie. And I didn't realize how much I was attached to my hair as a part of being beautiful. Like,
Mm,
I felt
mm,
like my hair, and particularly, goodness, like, pregnancy is just amazing, isn't it? With
mm,
the hair and the lushness of it. So losing all of that was really hard for me. I
mm,
hadn't expected it.
mm,
I did not know it was going to be that much. That was a big shock for me. And at the same time, it was, we're 12 weeks postpartum. And again, coming back to expectation,
mhm,
I feel like so many women expect that they'll be progressing with their postpartum recovery in terms of their body.
mhm.
And that was a point that I got to because previous to that, like I said, I loved my little belly. Like, I
Yeah.
thought, oh, how cute's this? Well, it wasn't so cute at 3 months postpartum. It was sort of getting a bit annoying now.
Yep.
And one thing that got me through was the belief in my own PregActive method.
Yeah.
And that sounds stupid, but I was like, no, stay consistent. And consistency is the key
Key.
because
I
I
agree.
used to. So I started my core rehab program at 2 weeks postpartum. I started with module
Oh,
one. The
did
reason
you?
I just,
2 weeks. That's
yes,
amazing. Of course you did,
but,
though. You gotta practice
but,
what you preach.
but I don't say that like somebody going, yeah, I picked up the weights and I was going for it and I went for a
No,
jog and I did
you
all
would have just
this.
been start with your Kegel exercises.
So the module one is very gentle, and I've
Mm,
been getting emails, even recently, just of women going, "Thank you so much for this program," and
mm,
it is so gentle, and it has helped me ease back in, and that's the design of it.
yeah.
And so I stayed with module one for probably 2 weeks,
Mhm.
and then I moved into module two. And that is when I designed the Core Express because I was like, I don't have time for a 20-minute workout. Who has time for a 20-minute workout? Like,
Genius.
I was like, it actually didn't give me anxiety as such, but I looked at the time, when you about to start a video
Mhm.
and you look at how long it's going to go for,
Yes.
and you go, I don't have
I
time
don't
for
have time
that.
for this. Yeah, you're almost dreading it.
Right.
Mm.
And before pre-pregnancy, back in those days, I looked at that and went, "It's all right. They'll
Mm,
just know that they can just do half of the video
mm,
because it will just be one circuit and that's 10 minutes. That's fine.
mm.
Those new mums will be fine with that."
Yeah.
Fast forward, no, they won't
No,
because
so
it's a
true,
sense of
Kaz.
not achieving.
Mm,
Like, I felt, yeah, already knowing I was gonna start something, I wasn't gonna
finish,
finish.
yeah. Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm not even going to start. And that's the problem. That's what a lot of women I know struggle with is that whole, oh, well, if I'm not going to even finish it, what's the point in starting? And that's where there is a point in starting. So just get started. But
Well, you're so
it's,
vulnerable at that time.
oh, so
So
vulnerable.
you're exactly right in saying that, and I experienced that firsthand as well. I've, followed your programs throughout my pregnancy and loved it, and tried a couple of times to get back into it postpartum, a little earlier on in the piece, and had that exact experience.
Mm,
Did it did it a couple of days and felt great about it, but then just sort of it was quite confronting when I either didn't have the time or didn't have the energy and felt like I couldn't complete it. And therefore, you end up feeling worse because you haven't achieved what you set out to. And so then
Mm.
you are not feeling good about yourself. You haven't done the
So
exercise.
sit and cry in the corner.
Sit and cry and have an extra coffee instead. So,
Here's your chocolate.
yeah.
Yes. Yeah, and that's the thing, and that's where we also then got the new app as well, because I'm like, I don't have time to start up my computer,
Mm,
log in. Like, I've only got 5 minutes,
mm, mm,
and so that's when this all started, which is quite ironic because I didn't realize that I would be revamping our entire program with having a newborn, and that's what I did.
mm,
I actually revamped the whole program, having going through it at that same stage and literally putting in things that I was like, this is what I need to do.
mm.
So
Do you feel like
getting back
having your own child has sort of reinvented your business? Or like, did you think
100.
beforehand that you knew everything you needed to know because of your studies and research and experience and all of that sort of thing? Like, did you expect that having a child would change your perspective on your business so much?
That's such a good question because me now looking back going, no, of course I didn't. But probably I did think
Mm,
that I knew a lot at that point. And probably I did think that I had, gone through so many journeys with so many people because I've changed that program so many times to adapt from the feedback that I got from members. So I thought, yes, this is definitely something that's going to work well. But I'm my biggest critic.
mm,
That's for sure. Like I'm not a perfectionist, but I'm certainly I'll pick out flaws.
mm,
And that's whether it's in my own expertise. So if it's something else, like if it's like something to cooking, I'm like, oh, this is wonderful. But if it's exercise and I say I go to a class, I'm like, that wasn't any good because of this, or she needed to say this. And in my head, I wouldn't say that to her, but that's what I do to myself. So when I do my own program, I actually sometimes go, oh, need to change this, need to do this. And that's exactly what I did. And that's why I designed it in module 2. There's an 8-minute core rehab, core express. And that is exactly the routine I did every single day.
mm,
And I would break it up. Like I would do 4 minutes of it and then I'd do the other 4 minutes later. Like I would just make sure that I got it done.
mm.
And what I did, and I remember talking to you about this back when we were going through it. And I remember you saying, Kez, what? when I told you that with Max's first feed for the night, so I would, do the whole whatever time it was at that stage, put him down, like do the bath, do the, feed him and then put him down. And then you always knew there was another feed, maybe like 11 or whatever time, 12. So I would go to sleep, but then I would wake up, feed him, and then, and everybody listening to this right now will think I'm absolute crazy, I would then, on my way back to my bed, I would then drop down on the floor and I would do.
You're a psycho, Kez.
Yeah, everyone's like, okay, this girl's
Everyone's
crazy. Turn this podcast
I'm
off.
just
What's
gonna say
going
what
on?
everyone's already thinking. But go on.
Okay, and now here's my argument back. Is that I actually counted that as the next day's
No, wait. You
exercise.
didn't explain exactly what you do. You'd do a full-on Pilates routine, wouldn't you?
No. So I had these exercises that look, and anyone wants to see them. They're in module 2, Core Express, and all you needed was a cushion. So I'd go near the couch, I'd grab the cushion, and I would do the exercises because obviously I memorized them.
What
And
stage are we talking about? Are you talking about like in the first 6 weeks or the first few months?
yeah, probably about week 4 to week 6.
Seriously? You were
Yeah,
like doing downward dogs and
it wasn't down dog. No, these are all really
at 2
basic
a.m.?
exercises. No, it was like 11 p.m.
Yeah.
But The reason I did it was because I actually found that time of night was peaceful enough because there was no expectation for me to be doing anything else but
Yeah.
sleeping. And so I was
Yeah,
like, okay,
true.
sacrifice. And because it literally took me 8 minutes. So I was like, okay, I can sacrifice 8 minutes plus. The other thing, and I remember talking to you about this
Mhm.
vividly, I remember, because I used to wait for Max to
Yeah.
make sure he was settled right. And I
Mm,
remember telling you that I would just drop down and do some exercise, maybe like one exercise or two,
mm,
while I was waiting for him to settle.
mm.
And you were like, oh, that's a good idea. I just stand over the cot and,
Yeah,
you
cry
know.
myself. No, it's actually a really good idea. It's a really good idea because, movement in your body and stretching, and it helps
It felt
you.
so much better.
Yeah, and it helps you, clear your mind as well. It helps
Yeah.
you sleep better. So it's
And the other
probably
thing
not the
was,
craziest thing.
there we go. Everyone's back on my side now. But the thing was that once I got back into bed, that feeling of getting back up again, if I had to go help settle Max,
Mhm.
was horrible. I hated like that whole get into bed and then like 2 minutes later I have to get back out again.
Mm,
So if I was doing my exercises and he was crying, and I'd sort of be able to also, this was really good for me, is it gave me that time to learn his cries as well, because obviously the really urgent cries and you'd go straight to him. But if it wasn't an urgent cry, I could sort of be listening to him rather than me laying in bed going, oh, do I get up? Do I not? I'm
mm,
gently doing these really gentle exercises, but listening to him and making a good decision on whether I go back in, whether I wait it out a little bit. So anyway, not recommended for everybody, but for me, that's what worked.
mm,
And that's one thing about this podcast is, I want to share things that worked for me,
mhm.
but and point out things that, obviously were struggles and hard as well. So, and that finishes part one. I have so much more to come for you in part two. So stay tuned.